Recording. All right, so welcome to our webinar here today on change management. And I swear every time I do one of these, I always say it's one of my favorite tools ever. But it's usually like trying to pick your favorite child or your favorite dog in my case. And change management truly is that for me. It has been that secret sauce in my career. And for doing this over 20 years, gosh, like 22, 23 years now, I started off in mechanical engineering and did a lot of process changes. I was around a lot of really, really great, smart engineers, technically amazing, and couldn't lead a rock or could not get a process change over the finish line to save their life. And I happened to fall into a change management class that was put on by a parent company that owned the company that I was working in. And they're like, oh, we're going to go send our project managers through this change management class. Do you want to try it out to see if it's something that you'd be interested in rolling out at your subsidiary? And I walked out of that session and I was like, my life has changed.
Change person.
Yeah. I was like, I can't even believe how much better this is. And I tell you, my first exercise in change management, because we had to bring something to the session, that we wanted to help somebody change with. And Barbie, I'm really sorry if you're watching. Barbie's my mother-in-law.
Oh.
Um, the example that I gave to her or gave to the class was it was right after my husband and my now husband and I got engaged. And we were planning our wedding in Vegas. And he's an only child. And it was his first wedding. So I was like, how am I going to break the news to Barbie that she's not going to have this huge wedding for her son, because she would invite everybody and their brother to this thing. So she was the example I used in change management, and I had never felt so prepared to have a conversation with somebody on something that I knew that they were not going to be super happy about, because of these change management tools. And I loved it. So from then on, I was like, this is my secret sauce. I need to learn everything about it that I can. And I just went down that rabbit hole. So thanks for joining us today to learn a lot more about change. So just a quick highlights. A lot of you already know a lot about joint pivot. So I'll just give you a reminder on this slide. Anything process improvement related, anything problem solving, project management, strategic planning, change management, which we're talking about here, leadership development and coaching, we are your people for that. So this is where, especially in times like right now, where you don't know if you can hire another FTE or you just want some fractional work coming in to help you with that, Jen and I can absolutely come in there and help you figure out what the issues are, help you solve those problems, and create great solutions, very creative solutions. And whether that's us coming in there and teaching your staff how to do it so that they can continue on doing it for you, or you're just using our knowledge in these cases and kind of keeping us around. Really, our goal is essentially to work us out of a job at your company so that we're transferring our knowledge to your employees, to make sure that you guys can continue to do this moving into the future. So our obligatory, who are we? Obviously, Julie Miller here. I am based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, as is Jen Tankanow. We have been friends now for actually quite a while. Jen went to school with my husband, so very, very tiny world here.
Small world.
And a very, very small world. So we are opposing Big Ten schools. She's a Michigan State grad. I'm a Wisconsin grad. And then ironic that we ended up in Ann Arbor. So I don't understand how
Well,
that
born
worked.
and raised, so not
True.
leaving my parents.
That is true.
Instant babysitters.
Not like me, who I was like, where's the lake? Where's the farthest I can get away? So obviously I don't live anywhere close to home anymore, but loving the area. Obviously I've been now here for, I think like 12 or 13 years. So it's been very, very fun. But Jen and I can tell you are passionate about what we do. We both came to that realization that we love what we do more than who we do it for. So this part of Joint Pivot where we get to work with people who actually want our help and are anxious about what we can help them with and are great partners with us. That is what we thrive on and we love doing. Which really leads us to our slides on the doing, the teaching, and the speaking. Obviously, we love educating others. So the more that we can share this information with other people, we have a lot of people help us along the way and a lot of great knowledge that we've learned from others. So it's our opportunity to really give back and make sure that we're sharing our work with other people as well. So I loved this cartoon when I saw it the first time. That it just cracked me up. The announcements of the changes went really well. And I have been in this situation before where it's like we call it like a launch and leave, where they come in, they explain a change that's going to happen, and then they like duck and cover or run in these cases. And we have all been parts of really good change, and we've all been parts of really bad change. Jen, you want to tell us about one of your changes that you've been through?
Yes, and it's actually a good one, but it was
Wonderful.
surprisingly good. A company I was at was terrible at change management, communication plans, considering the employees as customers. And when they rolled out a new HRIS, it was interesting because there was early communication. It was happening. There was, posters and things in the bathroom to read, which I personally love. And they gave us cards at our desks with our login information, and it said like, "Don't lose this. Put it in your desk." And everyone's desk had them. It was
Hmm.
fantastic. And then when it happened, it was easy. We got stuff in the mail. And I'm like, it was really strange because it just went so well and so easily. And you asked questions internally and you always found an answer.
Yeah.
Well, behold, fast forward to a couple months ago, I was talking with HR people there to do some work with them. And we were talking about change management. And I'm like, you know what? You guys did surprisingly well. And they're like, what? I'm like, that HRIS rollout. And they're like, oh, they're like, yeah, no, that company brought their own like communication plan, change management rollout schedule, everything to just drop on the company that I worked for that made it easy. And we
That's
were all kind
amazing.
of chuckling. I'm like, that is a benchmarkable process. It was fantastic.
That is so funny. And it's great because then you can go back and look at that and be like, hey, that was a great change. What did you do doing that? Because
Yeah,
a lot of times we only do lessons learned when things go bad. But this is
right.
an opportunity where you can go back and think about changes that went really well and figure out, hey, what can you steal from that? Guys, how do we repeat that
Hmm.
over and over
Right.
again? No, I love that. Fantastic. All right. So the other thing to think about is that change is a process. So in these cases, we know that change isn't just a single event. It is something that happens over time. And as much as we want things to just change overnight and it to happen that way, it just doesn't. It just does not work that way, unfortunately. It would be great if it worked like a light switch, just doesn't. So when we think about change, it's kind of going through all the different stages of change, kind of like the 5 stages of grief, that you work through in these cases. And knowing that not everybody changes at the same pace either. So it's important for us to understand that people change at their own pace. It's not necessarily overnight. And that's a lot to take on when you're leading people through change and even leading yourself through change. If you could think about some of the changes that you may have had personally that you've been going through, sometimes in these cases, you have to think through, why is this one taking so much longer than others? Or why am I adopting this change way quicker than I did this change? I felt that way when I was switching phones. I've been a Droid girl my entire life. And for one job, they gave me an iPhone, and it was the worst experience of my entire life. I just couldn't do it. I was like, this is awful. And I know, Jen, you can understand this one when you're used to working in Outlook and then you went to what, Domino, was it? I can't even remember
No,
it.
back to Lotus Notes.
Back to Lotus Notes. I,
Yes, to
yeah,
Lotus Notes.
that was the worst change I think I ever had in my life. I failed miserably at that one. I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't do this. So change is the process for sure. All right. So then we talk about how many changes do you actually have underway and change saturation being a thing. And really think back now that we are a year in, almost a year into this pandemic at this point, thinking about how much change is actually going on. So if you think back to where you were, let's say last February, beginning of February, how different is it today than it was back in February? And changes, my goodness, almost everything that we're doing has a pattern of a different change. And when we're talking about change management, it doesn't necessarily need to be like you are buying another company, you're changing names, or you're changing HRIS systems. It literally can be like you're changing the pens that you stock in the office. Anything that you're asking somebody to do differently today than they did yesterday is considered a change. And you don't always know how big or how small of a change will just cause somebody to go berserk at those points. And I've had that experience where I've just had so much going on in my life that one cheeseburger that was brought to me for dinner out of one of my friend's kind heart that had onions on it, and I had asked for no onions, turned into being scrunched in my fist with the little onions coming out of it because I had reached my change saturation point. So think about how many changes you have out there at one time. It's astronomical. So one thing I would tell you to do is after the webinar today, just sit down and make a list of all the changes that are underway and then give yourself a little grace if you think you're not making through them okay. Because there is a lot out there. It's okay to acknowledge that there's a lot and maybe take a few off your plate at this point. Because we do know that change saturation is on the rise. And this actually was pre-pandemic information from Prosci, a company that we work with quite a bit. And it was interesting because 28% in this case said that their organization is nearing the point of change saturation. And when I start working with some of the organizations now, they're telling me they are at the point or they're beyond the point of change saturation, especially moving people to remote work overnight, leading people overnight. It's been a lot to try and deal with kids being home from school, all that kind of fun stuff that we are dealing with. So recognize that change saturation is a thing. So I wanted to cover a few of the different change management methods you might be hearing about, just so you can differentiate between what those are. And then at the end here, we'll tell you which one's my favorite. Although if you know me, you know which one's my favorite already. The first one here is ADKAR, and that is an acronym for Awareness, Desire, Knowledge, Ability, and Reinforcement. And I'll tell you a little bit of story about this one towards the end of our presentation here today on what actually makes that work for me and how that makes me tick. So awareness is really understanding the need for change. Desire is building the support for change. The knowledge is teaching people how to do it. The ability is giving people the space to demonstrate the skills that they've just learned. And the reinforcement is how to make those changes stick. Another popular model that you might see is what they call the Kotter model. And there are 8 steps to the Kotter model. Now, if you've joined our webinars before, you know that I can only count to 5 on one hand. And anything that has more than 5 steps is probably not for me because I can never remember it in these cases. So that was one of the reasons that I naturally gravitated towards the ADKAR model for me, is it was just easier for me to remember. Now, I put these side by side for a reason so that you could see how they overlap because there's a lot of organizations that use Kotter's model for change, and there's a lot of organizations that use ADKAR's method for change. So when you take a look at these side by side, Kotter's first level of creation is is right along the side of the awareness portion of ADKAR. And then steps 2, 3, and 4 of Kotter, which are building, forming, and enlisting, is the desire stage. Now, there's a reason that there are 3 steps of Cotter in 1 step of desire. And usually it's because desire is the hardest step of ADKAR. And it is one of those where it's so difficult because it's highly people oriented and it's 100% based on someone's own individual wants and needs. So it's intensely personalized in those cases. Then we jump into knowledge, which aligns right with the enablement piece of Kotter's model. 6 for ability aligns right with the generate side of Kotter's model. And then 7 and 8, the sustaining and the instituting, aligns right with the reinforcement component of ADKAR. One of the other things that I get quite often as well is there is a change management component of PMI, our Project Management Institute. So if you've got your PMP or if you're going as a project management associate, they have their own rules when it comes to change management. Now, the great thing that I've seen with this over the last 5 to 10 years is we're really starting to break down the walls of every single, I would say, skill set having their own capabilities when it comes to change management. So you're starting to see change management, project management, Lean Six Sigma all come together for just continuous improvement. But you can see side by side here in this next slide that our project management activities align perfectly with our change management activities. So if you are one who's following the Project Management Institute steps for change management, it aligns right with ProSci's ADKAR as well. So you'll know where to pull in the change management components in each step of our project management phases too. So there's a couple different ones that you could use there. I think you guys know I love ADKAR, I love ProSci method there, and I also love teaching the Kubler Ross change curve because this is something that is super visual for people as well. And this translates super well knowing that we go through 3 stages every time we go through a change. We've got that stage one where we're super comfortable with what we're doing. We maybe or may not get some sort of complacency in there, but we feel really comfortable with it because we've got muscle memory and we know how to work it. Then we jump into that transition phase. And no matter what anybody says, and they can say, hey, I love change, their first reaction is always going to be stress and anxiety because they don't know exactly what it means for them yet. And that is that reptilian brain right back here that gives you that fight or flight response of anytime a change comes into play of the what's in it for me because I'm not sure if I want to do this yet. And then that leads into our future state where you start learning a little bit more about it and figure out what it is you want to do going forward. And it forces us into something new where we make that decision on whether or not we engage. So I love this slide specifically because it talks about the fact that there's all these different stages that we go through. So when we talk about the shock, and I always relate this back to the pandemic now, you run into the shock in like February, March timeframe where you're like, this is what? Oh, this is happening? Like what? And then you run into this denial of, oh, it can't really be that bad. Like who of us in March were thinking, okay, this is going to last for like 10 days, whatever, fine, we'll be fine during the summer. Then we go into acceptance of, all right, like I'm going to venture outside now. I'm going to step outside my door. And then we go into this depression mode of, I can't believe this is still happening. And then we go into this experimental stage where we start to see, okay, this looks like it's going to be a new normal. You might start going on a vacation again. You might like start seeing people in your driveways again to have some sort of social hour. And then you make a decision on, okay, can I live with this? Can I get back to my own life? And then you start to engage. And the big thing to remember that I love the Kubler Ross change curve for is a lot of the times us as leaders or parents or spouses of helping people through change, we start to see this acceptance and we think we're good, that we don't need to stay engaged anymore. So we see people starting to accept and then we move on to the next change or the next thing that we're doing. And if we exit out too early, that's where people can really get stuck in that depression mode. So I always tell people wait until they make the decision. Wait until they try, wait until they experiment, then they make the decision. And then you can exit out at that point and make some changes. And it's, oh, Jen, you're on mute. There
Hi,
you go.
can I add something?
Yeah.
I obviously have been a part of your change management classes many times and have seen that and want to make sure that it's not just major changes. I laugh. I'm thinking about my kids when I ask them to pick up.
Hmm.
Um, they're like, okay, fine. And I'm like, yes. And then they don't do it.
Hmm.
And then they finally remind them. And it's like, oh, you mean I have to pick up? And it's this huge, and then you tell them the end goal, like there's something there. And
Yeah.
and it can happen in 10 minutes, right? It's this is all the time, changing a start time to a meeting or changing something for employees, giving them new pens. Like
Hmm.
think of that curve every single time. Even if it's something small, it's
Yeah.
still a big deal.
Yeah. Still a big deal in those cases, 100%. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting because like we just don't necessarily recognize it. Like it didn't smack me in the face until I saw this curve and I was like, oh,
Hmm.
that's what I'm doing wrong. Oh, hello. So that's where I'm like, I love sharing this stuff with other people. There's so many great components of this besides just ADKAR to bring into it, which is where I loved this curve that actually came out from the pandemic this year. And I put some dates on the bottom of it to show kind of what we were all dealing with, where March through May, we were really just responding. And everything was temporary fixes. We were entirely reactive at that point and very cautious. Then June through September, we started in this recovery phase where it was like, all right, what interim things do we put in place? What do we hold off on this point? And because there's hopefully going to be an end in sight. And then we had this inflection point at the end of September where we're like, yeah, this isn't going away anytime soon. So we need to get back to business. And that's where we renew. And the stuff that was interim, we decided what stays, what goes, and how do we operate in this new world. And we can't keep putting stuff off anymore. And that's where a lot of companies are at this point. That's where a lot of families are at this point where we're just like, whatever, we're dealing with it and we're getting back to our normal and we're figuring out ways to get things done. And I'll show you a little bit on how we ended up selecting Prosci. So I've actually rolled out ADKAR at Prosci ADKAR at 3 different companies now, I believe. 4, actually 4. And we went through extensive criteria. Of course, we had to do a good matrix of this to understand and justify our decisions to make sure we were making the right ones. We just wanted to show this to you that for us, ProSci hit all of the boxes for us. And I will tell you, ProSci does not give us any money. I happen to be a trainer with them, train the trainer as part of their certification, but we do not get any kickbacks from ProSci. Like I'm literally just telling you about this because I'm an ADKAR nut and I love ProSci this much. And Jen can attest to that because if I could get a tattoo that said ProSci ADKAR on it, I probably would at this point because I live it. And my husband knows when I'm ADKARing him and he calls me out on it now, and that shows you how much I love it. So one of the things with ADKAR is helping people understand the concept behind it. And for me, ADKAR can be explained in this fabulous example of a kid going down a water slide where we saw a gentleman basically teach his kid how to go down a water slide of, hey, did you see the water slide turn on? Do you see all the kids running over to the water slide? That's awareness. Then he's like, hey, do you want to be a big kid and go down the water slide like the other big kids? When you're little, who doesn't want to be a big kid and go down the water slide? That's clearly desire. Then he's like, hey, do you want to sit on my lap? I'll teach you how to go down the water slide. We can do it together. And that's knowledge, teaching the kid how to do it. And then the dad's like, hey, I'll stand at the bottom and I'll wait to catch you. And if anything goes wrong, I'll be right there. And that's the ability component. So I've taught you in the knowledge piece, you've gone down with me, and the ability is allowing you to showcase those skills and what you've learned in a safe environment. And then the kid goes down the water slide and the dad celebrates at the bottom and is like, yes, you did it. And that was reinforcement. And it was the greatest example of ADKAR that I think I have ever seen. I can guarantee you that I had no training on ADKAR whatsoever, but it was such a great example of how change management and how ADKAR works. It just changes my frame of thinking. So I know where I am in a change process, and I'm like, oh, I might be in the K phase or I might be in the ability phase. But somebody I'm working with might be stuck in awareness or they might be stuck in desire. And if I go in there and I try and teach them, it doesn't matter how much I teach them. If they don't desire it yet, if they haven't made that personal decision to jump on board with us, they're never going to pay attention to the training that we're giving them. Then you got something to pop in on?
No, that's
Okay.
100%
I
agree.
just love it. And I will say that guy was brilliant because he spent like the next hour sitting at the pool bar watching his kid go around and around on the water
Right.
slide. I was like,
Yeah.
that guy's a genius.
I
Um,
just like that story a
it's
lot.
so much fun. It was so much fun. I'd like to be back in Scottsdale where I saw that happen. It'd be nice, especially today while it's snowing.
Someday soon.
Right? So this is a gift for you guys. You are going to get a copy of this PDF, of the presentation and this PDF in your email, along with a link to our live recording here today. Uh, Hopefully within the next 24 hours here, it takes us a little while to upload them to YouTube. But this is one of my favorite matrices to start using when it comes down to change management. And that is really thinking about things from the organizational level and from the individual perspective. And I love this because it helps me get out of my own head because the change isn't about me. The change is about the person I'm helping through the change. Because if I'm pushing forward a change or a change in process or a new tool, I've already made that personal decision for that change. But if I'm trying to roll it out thinking that that other person is at the same spot of ADKAR that I am, it's not going to be good for anybody at that point. So this is where I would recommend this matrix to go through and start identifying what is the gain for the organization and then what is the gain for that person themselves. So what does the organization gain? What are the benefits? And then what do the individuals gain? What's in it for them in those cases? And really try to identify the personal components of what drives them. Then on the opposite side, we have the pain associated with it. So what is the pain the organization will feel? What happens if they don't go through with this change? What are the risks that are possible if they don't address it? And then from a personal perspective, what is the pain if somebody opts out? So if they choose not to participate in that change, sometimes it can be an entire culture shift that if you choose not to participate in it or essentially drink that Kool-Aid, there might not be a spot in the organization for you anymore. And then what are the risks to somebody personally if they don't participate in those changes? And I always like to do this matrix before I jump into a conversation with somebody to get a better feel of where I think they might be in the steps of ADKAR, to get a really good frame for our conversation to help guide it in those cases. And I also wanted to give you guys a real life example. So I have a fun dog up here. This is actually one of my friend's dogs to show that there are lots of ways that you can use this stuff in your real life. And I do walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to these ADKAR assessments. And one of the great things is we're offering a workshop coming up here in March that will teach you all of these wonderful ADKAR assessments. And I'm going to tell you about one of them here that ended up getting this sweet doggy a home. So one of my friends who I love near and dear to my heart, and we watch every year the March Madness tournament together. Our husbands work, we're day drinking, watching basketball, and we always come up with creative things when that's happening. So she fosters puppies for a rescue, and she's got a wonderful dog at home whose name is Eli. And she really wanted a second dog. She's like, I really want to keep one of these puppies. And her husband had said, no, we're a one dog family. That's it. One dog, one dog, one dog, one faithful companion. I said, you know what? This is a change management issue that we are dealing with. And that was probably maybe a margarita in at that point. So what did I do? I went out to my car and I got my flip charts, some post-it notes, and we started making a change management plan. So we identified where her husband was on the change management curve of ADKAR. So we said, he is aware that she wants another dog. He does not desire that she wants another dog and does not desire having another dog in the house. From the knowledge and the ability perspective, obviously they're taking care of a dog currently, and they're usually taking care of 5 to 7 foster dogs or foster puppies at one time. So that wasn't an issue either because they knew how to do it. And then the reinforcement, I mean, look at that face. What more reinforcement do you need than a dog smiling back at you? So we developed a plan to address the desire. So we came up with this plan that we knew that she got to name the puppies that came in. So she could pick the theme, she could name the puppies in these cases. So we said that next time that she got a group of puppies in, if there was a girl dog she wanted to keep, we picked a name. And if there was a boy dog she wanted to keep, we were going to pick a name that we knew he wouldn't be able to turn down. So we said if it was a girl dog that she wanted to keep, we were naming the dogs after Hunger Games people. So we were going to name the dog she wanted to keep Katniss. And if it was going to be a boy dog that she wanted to keep, we were going to be naming them after Michigan athletes. And the boy dog would be named Denard. So come a few months later, she finds this beautiful black lab that she really, really wants to keep. And that is a wonderful picture of Katniss. So hook, line, and sinker, it worked for us. And it's a great example of how you can use these change management questions to really, really figure out where somebody is: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. He happened to be at desire. So we came up with a plan to address desire. And now Katniss has a beautiful home and a wonderful smiley face here. So that was many, many years ago. In that case, we're probably going to have to rerun another change management plan there soon. So it can definitely be used personally in these cases. I know we've thrown a lot at you today when it comes to change management, and this is really meant to give you the basics of what's all out there, what we like, what we use. We can help with any of those different methods of change management. Jen and I are always happy to help with change management plans and get you on board with these things, whether it's through even a short hour engagement to, hey, we've got some big HRIS system changes that are running out in these cases to be able to put together a good, solid change management plan for you. So we do have a couple more opportunities coming up to learn more about change management. I'll highlight one down here in the corner, this workshop coming up. It's coming up in early March. And if you go to our website on jointpivot.com and you go up to the header where it says webinars and workshops, there's an opportunity for you to sign up for interest on this. So we've got a couple people who are already really interested in this change management class. It's going to be 4.5 hours. It's $150. You're going to learn all of these assessments. And if you're listening to the webinar, email me and I'll give you a discount code for it to get a little bit even better rate on that. It's a fantastic opportunity to learn all of the different assessments that are part of basic change management that you'll really be able to apply. Jen has sat through this class multiple times. It's
Awesome.
fantastic. It's, like I said, one of my favorite ones to teach. So sign up right on the website and we can work with you to make sure that it's a date that works for everybody. So if you can get in at the very beginning, we're working with that small group of people to make sure that we're picking a date that works for the most people to get those that really want to participate in it booked on board. And then we've got another webinar coming up. Jen's going to be leading us through our planning phase, which Jen's webinars on planning are absolutely
Mm.
fantastic. If you are not a planner or you don't know where to start with planning, she's going to be talking about root causes and using those in strategic planning to overcome roadblocks. Jen, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on that one.
No, but exactly. Why are we hesitant to do stuff? And how can we get a couple things planted in our heads so we're always ready to go?
Absolutely. It's fantastic. So that is happening on February 23rd from 11 to 11:30 Eastern. So you can sign up on our website for that as well. And we'll also include a link to that in the email with today's webinar information as well. And then we do have a workshop coming up tomorrow. It's still open, I think, through the rest of today. Sign up for that closes actually at the end of today. So if you want to get in on that workshop, that one's $35 on personal planning made super simple. But if you loved the change management aspects of what we're doing, I highly recommend that 4.5 hour workshop on change management. That is one we have ran with multiple organizations. I'm running it actually for a client coming up here in actually 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow. We're doing it with them. And we run it for a lot of organizations already. So if you've missed out on full day ADKAR class as part of
Mhm,
the companies that Jen and I used to work for, this
mhm.
is your opportunity to get that change management training from us virtually.
And Julie, just to add, it's obviously change management, but there are so many leadership components.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, it's what amazing looks like from supervisor, manager, director, C-suite. So it's
exactly.
it's pretty amazing.
Game changer. Game changer
Mhm,
from a personal development perspective. You're 100%
mhm,
right there, Jen. Awesome. So I'm going to jump to our last slide here that has our contact information on for if you've got any questions to follow up. Jen and I love talking about this stuff, so don't hesitate at all to reach out to us. And I know we are right on our time here, so I will leave the chat open for just a minute or so here. If you do have any questions for us, feel free to ask us in chat, or you can send us an email with your questions in, and we will be sure to respond to you as well. So I hope you found this change management our secret sauce. It's been my secret sauce since 2008, I think it's been now. So for quite a while, for 13 years at this point. And I love it. And I live and breathe it every single day and love to talk about it, obviously. So this really just scratched the surface of what
mhm.
change management can do for you. There's so much more out there that would, I told Jen earlier, I could talk about this stuff for days because I love it. So thank you, everyone. We hope you have a fantastic afternoon and stay safe in the snow.